Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these elegant twisted drops. Now this design is very open for different sizes and shapes of drop beads, so you can definitely customize it, but if you want to learn how to make your own, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. Now I have two different gauges of regular round silver coated copper wire, and the first one here is a 0.6mm, and this is going to be acting as the base wire. And the other one here is a 0.25mm, so we're using a very fine weaving wire because the base wire is also quite fine. And then this is the bead that I'm using here. Now the specific measurements for this one is 1.7cm by 1.2cm in a drop shape, and obviously it's faceted as well. Now you do not have to use this specific size of bead for this design because it's very easy to customize it. So you could just make the length longer if it's a bigger bead, or shorter as well if it's a smaller bead. But let's just get our materials ready and let's get started. Now I've then cut two lengths of my 0.6mm wire here, and they are different lengths. So the first one is about 20 centimeters long, and then the other one here is about 25 centimeters long because it's going to be used slightly more. So I then take my two lengths here because the first thing we need to do is make a wrap loop on the long length of the two. And I'm just using the short length basically to measure. So I'm putting the ends together, and then up here I have the long length coming out a bit more. So I'm just going to use that, and basically just it means I'm going about 5 centimeters in from the end of the long one. And then just placing my pliers there. And then I'm just putting the short one out of the way for now. Now I then have my short length down here, and I'm going to put about a 90-degree bend in. This is just making a basic wrapped loop. Something like that. Then I'm going to be taking my 6-step belt making pliers, and I'm using the smallest step. You can also just use your round nose pliers because I don't want the loop to be too big here. Then I'm going to take the long length and bring it over the top of my pliers all the way around to create a full circle like that. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, I place them on the loop there so it doesn't move too much. Then I take the long end here, and I want to wrap this right below the loop to basically fasten it in place. So that's once, and I'm just going to wrap it again to make it secure. And then I have this long length here coming out in the direction towards my hand basically, that I'm holding my pliers with. And you can see we have a wrapped loop. And then this short end is the one that's actually going to be going through the bead, and this long length here is the one that's going to be wrapping around the bead, hence why this needs to be the long one. So if you imagine, we get the bead out here, and I just take this short length and put it down through from top to bottom. So the loop's going to end up sitting right there at the top, and obviously the wire comes out of the end, the bottom of the bead, and then this long length is going to wrap around the bead multiple times. Now obviously we need to do weaving first before I'm going to start wrapping it, so that is what I'm going to start doing now. So in order to be able to do that, I'm going to then also bring in the other length of wire that we cut ready as well, so the shorter one. And this is what I'm going to then place next to this long length coming from the loop, and we're going to start making our weave. Now what I'm just going to do is, because they're going to be about the same length here, obviously this is going to be wrapped around the bead, you can just put them together on the outer end here. And then you just have a short little tail in here that you can just hold on to as you're getting started. And also we're going to use that just right at the end. But then basically, I'm having these two lengths is what I'm going to be wrapping around. Then I'm going to grab my 0.25mm weaving wire. Now I'm not cutting off a length of this, I'm leaving it attached to the reel because it can be hard to know exactly how much you're going to need. And it's just easier and has less wastage if you just leave it on the reel, because we can easily weave here. It's nice and open on the ends, so we don't have to worry about it. Now the weave that I'm going to be doing is the diagonal wire weave. It's my personal favorite. So I'm just going to put it behind the two lengths of wire here, the base wires. Now what you can do is start a little bit further down because it can be a little bit fiddly to start all the way up here. So just go a little bit down the wire just to have some more to hold on to, and just leave a short little tail of the weaving wire there. Put it behind the base wires, and then you can also just open up the ends here. That makes it easier to wrap and weave the wire in and out. I'm then gonna, my weaving wire is coming down behind and going downwards. I'm gonna then bring it around the bottom one, so over the top and down between the two, just to wrap it around the bottom one a single time. And then you wrap it around over the top of both of them, and then you bring it straight away up between the two and use that to also push down. Make sure your wraps get nice and tight, and then around the top one by itself, and then all the way down behind. And this is now one full round. Now what you can do, because especially right here at the beginning, is use your pliers just to make sure to squeeze it nice and tight, because it can be hard to get in there with your fingers and your nails. So basically you just need to repeat this now around the bottom one by itself first, and then over the top of both of them. Come up between the two, so we can then go over the top of the top one. Around that by itself, then down behind, and we've completed another round. And again, you can just push them together. Now what I said is you can start a little bit further down, because as you can see here, you'll be able to move once you've made a bit of work. So maybe once I've made a centimetre or so of my weave, I can just push it all the way up to sit. Basically push it as far as it'll go, and then you can just continue working from there. I wouldn't do too long a length because it can make it hard to move, but just do a little bit of work, and then you should be able to push it up and then continue working while you then actually have something to hold on to. So just keep going like this until you have the length that you need. So I now weed my length here, and just for reference, the length that I have here is about 11 centimeters. But obviously that might be different for you because it will depend on the bead, but also really how you want it to look. So just weave a nice length, and you can always then add more to it, or even take away if you need to, because the wire is still attached to the reel. So just weave the length that you think you're going to need. But then I'm going to take my bead here, because we now need to add that on, because this is the point where we need to then wrap the wire around the bead. Because obviously also to find out if we need to weave a bit more or if we weave too much. But then basically I'm obviously doing the kind of wider part of it downwards. It's up to you how you want yours to look. But I'm pushing it all the way up till it won't go any further. And I'm kind of keeping hold of the wire just below the bead to make sure it doesn't keep slipping down. Now it might do, just keep pushing it back up if it does. But then as I'm holding on to that, I want to start, this can be a bit fiddly, but then bringing the weaved section here around the bead. Now you find different way of holding it, it's completely up to you. You might even kind of keep swapping around how you're holding it, probably will. But as you can see, I'm still kind of just pushing up the bead, but then I want to start bringing the weaved section around the bead. Now the most fiddly is really in the beginning, just to kind of get the wrap going. But then the point is to bring it around the bead and making sure the weave section is laying flat against the bead like that the whole way, so it's not twisting around itself. But then also that we're bringing it around in as even a way as possible. So I kind of just want to bring it down in front a little bit more. And then this is also what I said, it's up to you how you want it to look, because the distance between the wraps, you might want it more or less. You might want it tighter, so them closer to each other, or you might want them further away so it kind of shows more of the bead. That will also then determine how long a length you'll need to weave, which is why I said you kind of weave a decent length and you can always add to it if you need more. Then keep bringing it around, pushing it against the bead, making sure that it lays flat there, continues to lay flat. And this is where it's coming back around to itself. As you can see, the bead keeps wanting to slide off, which is natural. Just keep pushing it up there. And then keep bringing the weed section around. So now I'm starting to really follow the first section there to make sure the rest then gets as even as possible. You can obviously keep adjusting it. And because we're still around the narrow part, we haven't reached the widest part yet, the bead would still fall out. But once we get over that widest part, that will then also help to keep the bead in place. Make it a little bit easier. Just keep bringing it around. And obviously if you're making two, so you say if you're making a pair of earrings instead of say a pendant, then you'll maybe also want to try and compare them to each other to get them as even looking as possible. And of course you can also do them mirrored from each other. You'll just have to start the whole process in a mirrored image. But then once you've gotten over that widest part, we then need to bring it down to the narrow part. And as you can see now, that's already holding the bead in place naturally. But you just keep bringing the weed section around and around. You can keep going back and adjusting it. We can keep doing that until we've finished things off. And just making sure. I'm now starting to bring it in towards, because obviously this is in a narrow point, it's going in towards where the point is, the bottom point, which we want to reach. Because that's where we then need to finish off the weed section as well. And bringing that in towards meeting up there. And then before I start finishing anything off, I want to double check everything and to make sure that I'm happy with it. Because as I said, we can still adjust anything if we want to. So just go through and double check that. So now I wrapped it all the way around here, and I also know I don't need to make any more weave on my section down here because it fits just perfectly. Then I want to first of all just finish off my weaving wire, because obviously we're done using that. Now I did finish off wrapping around the single base wire by itself, but I want to just wrap around it again, just because it is quite a fine weaving wire. So I'm just bringing it around the same wire so it's wrapped around at least twice. You can always do it again if you want to. And also making sure, which you might need to use the pliers for because it's a little bit of a tight space, that all the wraps down here are nice and tight together. And then you just want to go in and finish off the weaving wire. So just get your pliers in there, cut off the excess. You can always open it up a little bit if you want to. Like that. And of course you just want to squeeze down that very end of the weaving wire. Now all I have left is the actual base wires themselves. So first of all, I have the base wire that's coming through the bead out of the hole there. I'm just making sure that it's all nice and straight. And then I want to bring these two base wires, making sure all of the wrap here that I've already done around the bead stays where it is. So I'm bringing basically the bare part of these wires around the wire that's coming through the bead. Just nice and tight right here, the very tip of the bead. So just something a bit like that. Doesn't have to be multiple times and down the wire. Now I then want to go and cut off the excess of these wires, making sure obviously I just do those wires, not the actual wire that's coming out through the bead. So cut off the excess, and then using chain nose pliers, just want to go in and adjust these into place. So make sure that first of all get pushed down against the beads so the ends aren't sticking up and out. So push them down, and you also want to just tighten this little wrap at the very center up around that wire coming out through the bead. So just tighten that up nicely, and it's also pretty seamless. And then we obviously have this wire sticking out of the bead. We also want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is literally, to also keep it so it's not too bulky, because obviously we want the actual bead to be the main part, I'm going to bring it down the side of the other two wires that I just wrapped around it. Now obviously there's not a lot of space here, so what I'm going to do is cut off excess of the wire but leave a short little tail. And something like that, just enough so I can basically take my chain nose and maneuver this into place. So basically bringing it down in towards the bead, and then squeezing that into place as well. And then the ends of the wires here kind of interlock with each other, and it holds it all in place. And it's also not too bulky and obvious. So there we go. This end is now finished off. Now on the other end we have a short little tail of a weaving wire and also a short tail of the base wire left. So first of all I just want to get rid of the excess of the weaving wire. Get that out of the way. Again, I've just made sure to wrap an extra time around the base wire. Just make sure to squeeze that in and kind of tuck it away in between the wire and the bead. And then all that's left is this little tail of the base wire. Now what I like to do is I take my chain nose, because obviously it's just a short little end that we have. It's coming from this front side here and kind of going around, and can come around towards the back. Now what you'll find is there's a little gap, or can be a little gap, you can always create the gap if you don't quite have it, between where the weed section starts and the very top of the bead. So basically what I'm doing is bringing this little tail around, and I'm just getting it through that little gap. So you might have to just maneuver the wire a little bit and just bring it out through there, because basically what it's doing then, just see where it's at, is coming, it's wrapping around the wire that's actually then going through the bead. There we go. Now just push it through, help it along, and you just want to kind of tighten this up, and it's then going to actually wrap below the wraps that we did to create the loop with. So you just bring it through here and then make sure it tightens up right below those wraps, so it kind of appears to just continue anyway. It all kind of blends into one. And squeeze that in place, and then I bring it around again, but I'm not bringing it through that little gap this time. I'm just bringing it around to kind of be able to then cut off the excess right in where the last wrap finished, and then you literally just squeeze it in, because obviously they'll be sticking out a little bit as well, and then it kind of hides away in behind some of the other wires. And also it might actually, depending on your bead as well, this has got quite a large hole, kind of actually goes a little bit into the hole. So obviously you can kind of see now this has gone a little bit out of shape around the bead, but it might do that. But you know it was fine the way it was and you liked how it looked, so you can kind of just push things back into place now that we've finished off all the wires. And this is then your finished drop. And then you can literally just use the loop to attach either a chain if you want to make it a necklace, or your earring findings if you want to make a pair of earrings. So I think it's a very nice and elegant design, and it's very open for different sizes and shapes of beads as well. So I do hope you enjoyed the tutorial here. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.